The mask fell to the marble floor of the Sinclair mansion with a sound that seemed to echo through eternity. Harrison froze in the middle of the staircase, his hand still holding the velvet case with the 5-carat ring he intended to give to Cassandra that night. His eyes fixed on the face of the maid kneeling on the floor, gathering the shards of what had concealed her identity for months. His blood ran cold. Those amber eyes, that nearly imperceptible scar above the left eyebrow, the delicate curve of her chin. Impossible. Luna Martinez slowly stood up, and for the first time in 8 months working in that house, she looked directly into Harrison's eyes. There was no fear there, only a cold determination he had never seen in the woman he had loved a decade ago. Violeta. The word came out as a strangled whisper from his throat. She didn't respond. She simply collected the fragments of the latex mask she had worn to disguise the features that plastic surgery had not been able to completely alter. The mask that transformed Violeta Navarro into the unrecognizable Luna Martinez. "You're dead." Harrison descended the remaining steps, his legs moving of their own accord. The case fell from his hand, the ring rolling across the polished floor. The car. The fire. "I saw. You saw what they wanted you to see." Her voice was different, deeper, aged by years of forced silence. "And now, I will show you what really happened that night in Montauk." The library door swung open, and Cassandra Whitmore appeared, wrapped in a navy silk dress that cost more than Luna earned in a year. Her perfect smile faltered at the sight before her. "Harrison, darling, your parents are waiting for dinner." She paused, her eyes scanning Luna's exposed face. For a fraction of a second, something passed across her delicate features, recognition, fear, but it was quickly replaced by manufactured confusion. "What's going on here? Luna, are you okay?" "Don't lie to him, Cassandra." Violeta stepped forward, decades of repressed anger vibrating in every word. "Not now, not after everything." Harrison looked between the two women, his mind struggling to process the impossible. Cassandra, with whom he planned to spend the rest of his life, the woman he had met at a charity event 6 months ago who seemed to share all his values, all his tastes. And Violeta, the first and only true love of his life, the woman whose death he had carried like a cross on his back for 10 years. "Someone needs to explain to me what's happening." He backed up until he found the wall, needing the support. "Now." Cassandra moved quickly, positioning herself between Harrison and Violeta, her hands outstretched in a placating gesture. "Harrison, this woman is clearly disturbed. Perhaps we should call security. My name is Violeta Navarro." The interruption was firm, laden with an authority Luna had never shown. 10 years ago, I was engaged to Harrison Sinclair. The night before our wedding, I drove to Montauk for a bachelorette party, organized by my best friend. I didn't know that would be the last night of my life as Violeta. Harrison felt his legs weaken. The memory of that night still haunted him. The police call at 3 in the morning. Violeta's car found at the bottom of a cliff, ablaze. The body too charred for an open casket. His mother, Margot Sinclair, saying it might be better this way, that a girl from a simple family, daughter of Mexican immigrants, would never truly fit into his world. "The accident," he began. "It wasn't an accident." Violeta pulled a folder from inside her maid's apron. How she had managed to hide that during months of working under the same roof as him, Harrison couldn't comprehend. "Inside this folder is the truth that your family and the Whitmore family killed to protect." Cassandra visibly paled. "You have no proof of anything." "I have everything." Violeta opened the folder, revealing photographs, documents, medical records. "I have the bank transactions, the emails, the recordings. I spent 10 years piecing together every part of this truth." Harrison forced himself to look at the documents. His training as a corporate lawyer allowed him to process the information quickly, even as the emotional shock threatened to paralyze him. Payments made by Sinclair Industries to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. emails between Margot Sinclair and Richard Whitmore, Cassandra's father, references to a problem that needed to be resolved before the wedding. No. He shook his head, refusing to believe. My mother would never. Your mother paid $250,000 for me to disappear. Violeta's voice broke for the first time, revealing the pain behind her controlled facade. She didn't expect me to survive the fall, but I did. I woke up 3 days later in a clandestine hospital in Connecticut, with a man telling me that if I ever returned, if I tried to contact you, my family in New Mexico would pay the price. Harrison felt bile rise in his throat. He thought of his mother, always so elegant, always so concerned with appearances and lineage. He thought of how she insisted he move on from grief quickly, how she introduced Cassandra just 6 months ago, as if fate had brought them together. And Cassandra? He looked at the woman he loved, or thought he loved. What's her role in this? Cassandra opened her mouth, but Violeta was quicker. Our original engagement threatened more than just the purity of the Sinclair lineage. The merger between Sinclair Industries and Whitmore Enterprises depended on a marital alliance. Your marriage to me would destroy years of corporate planning, so they created an alternative. I loved you. Harrison felt tears burning his eyes, something that hadn't happened since Violeta's fake funeral. I would have given up everything for you. I know. Violeta allowed herself to show her own pain now. And that's why they took me out of your way. The sound of high heels echoed in the hallway. Margot Sinclair appeared, immaculate in a Chanel tweed suit, her jewelry understated yet undeniably expensive. She stopped upon seeing Violeta, and for the first time in her life, Harrison saw his mother lose her composure. How dare you enter this house? The venom in Margot's voice was palpable. I've worked here for 8 months. Violeta smiled, but there was no humor in it. I cleaned your floors, I washed your clothes, I listened to your conversations, and you never, not once, really looked at me, because people like me are invisible to people like you. Margot quickly recovered, her social mask returning. Harrison, darling, this woman is clearly unbalanced. Whatever she's claiming, it's true. Harrison interrupted, his voice dead. He looked at the folder in his hands, at the irrefutable proof of his family's betrayal. You killed the woman I loved. I saved you from a terrible mistake. Margot lifted her chin, defiant. She was unsuitable, common. You deserved someone like Cassandra. Harrison looked at Cassandra, truly seeing her for the first time. The resemblance to Violeta was subtle, yet undeniable now that he knew what to look for. The same height, the same delicate bone structure, even the same tone of voice when she was relaxed. Cassandra had been chosen, molded to be an acceptable replacement for the love they had stolen from him. How long? He asked Cassandra. How long did you know who I was before we met at that event? Cassandra didn't answer, but her tears said everything. Violeta closed the folder, her purpose fulfilled. I didn't come here for revenge, Harrison. I came for truth. Outside, through the mansion's enormous windows, the lights of Boston twinkled in the autumn night. The silence that followed Violeta's words was broken by the sound of a crystal glass shattering. Richard Whitmore had appeared at the entrance of the room, his normally tanned face now pale as paper. The whiskey he held had slipped from his fingers, spilling amber liquid and sparkling shards across the floor. You should be dead. The words came out hoarse, laden with an accusation that confirmed everything Violeta had just revealed. Harrison felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. It was one thing to see documents, another entirely to witness the unintentional confession of one of the most powerful men in Boston. Richard Whitmore, whose financial empire rivaled that of the Sinclairs, whose philanthropic reputation was unquestionable, had just admitted complicity in attempted murder. "Dad, shut up!" Cassandra rushed to him, her hands trembling as she grasped her father's arm. "Don't say anything else." But Richard seemed hypnotized, his eyes fixed on Violeta, as if he were seeing a ghost. We spent a fortune putting you in that hospital. We gave you a new identity, enough money to start over anywhere in the world. Why come back?" Violeta took a step toward him, and Harrison noticed for the first time the slight limp in her walk, a remnant that Luna had always disguised with careful movements. "Because you didn't just steal my life, Richard. You stole my family." Margot Sinclair moved with the speed of a striking snake. "Guards, I want this woman out of my property immediately." "I don't think you want to do that, Margot." Violeta remained calm, her hand resting on the folder. "Because everything in here, every document, every recording, every financial transaction is already in the hands of 3 different lawyers. If anything happens to me, if I don't check in every 24 hours, everything goes straight to the FBI and to every major newspaper on the East Coast." Harrison watched his mother calculate her options, saw the exact moment she realized Violeta wasn't bluffing. Margot Sinclair hadn't gotten where she was by being reckless. She knew when she was cornered. "What do you want?" The question came out cold, practical. For Margot, everything in life boiled down to transactions. "I already said, truth." Violeta turned to Harrison, and he saw years of pain etched in every line of her face. "But before that, there's something you need to know. Something none of them know that I discovered." Harrison forced himself to speak, his voice coming out hoarse. What more could there be? Violeta took a deep breath, and for the first time since the mask had fallen, he saw hesitation in her eyes. "The night of the accident, I wasn't alone in the car. I was pregnant, Harrison, 8 weeks along." The world stopped. Harrison felt as if someone had ripped his heart from his chest with their bare hands. "No, the baby survived." Violeta's words came out in an urgent whisper. "The doctors at the clandestine hospital performed an emergency cesarean. I was in a coma, unable to decide. When I woke up 3 days later, my child had disappeared." Cassandra gasped, a hand covering her mouth. Richard Whitmore staggered to the nearest sofa, his face now gray, but it was Margot who spoke, her voice deadly in its calm. "You can't prove any of this." "Can't I?" Violeta pulled another document from the folder. "I have the medical records, the falsified birth certificate, and I have DNA." She looked directly at Harrison. "Our son is 9 years old now, and I know exactly where he is." Harrison could no longer stand. His legs gave way and he collapsed against the wall, sliding down to the floor. A son. He had a son he had never known. A child who had grown up without a father while he wasted years in mourning and then prepared to marry the wrong woman. "Where?" The word came out strangled. "Where is my son?" Violeta knelt beside him, keeping a respectful distance but allowing him to see the truth in her eyes. "He was adopted by a family in Connecticut. A good family, Harrison. They didn't know his real origin. They believed I was just a teenage mother who couldn't raise him. He is happy, but he is mine." Harrison felt tears burning his eyes. "He is ours." "I know." Violeta's voice broke. "And that's why I came back. Not for revenge against your family, though God knows they deserve it. I came back because our son deserves to know the truth about who he is." Margot had found her voice again, regaining control with the determination of someone used to manipulating impossible situations. "This is blackmail. You want money. Everyone wants money in the end. I don't want a cent of your dirty money." Violeta stood tall, facing the matriarch of the Sinclair family with a strength that years of trauma had not broken. "I want you to look at what you've done. I want Harrison to know what kind of people truly control his life. And I want my son to have the choice that was taken from me." Harrison forced himself to stand, wiping away tears with the back of his hand. His legal training began to kick in again, processing the implications of everything that had just been revealed. "If what you're saying is true, if you have proof of all this, Then my mother and Richard could go to prison. Attempted murder, kidnapping, adoption fraud. Yes, Violeta confirmed. They can. So why hasn't it gone to the police yet? It was her turn to seem vulnerable. Because if I do that, our son's life will be destroyed. He will be ripped from the only family he knows, dragged through a media circus, forced to process a trauma he doesn't even know exists. He is 9 years old, Harrison. He deserves a childhood. Harrison looked at his mother, truly seeing her for the first time in his life. Not the elegant matriarch of Boston society, not the philanthropist who donated millions to museums and operas. He saw a woman capable of ordering the death of an innocent person to preserve a corporate merger and a family lineage that existed only on paper. "How could you?" he asked, his voice broken. "How could you take my son from me?" Margot lifted her chin, defiant to the end. "I did what was necessary to protect this family. That girl," she spat the word as if it were poison, "would have ruined everything 3 generations of Sinclairs built. She was the woman I loved." Harrison felt anger beginning to replace shock. "And you killed her, or at least tried to." "I gave you a better life," Margot insisted. "Cassandra is perfect for you. She comes from the right family, has the right education, understands our world. That Mexican would never—" "No!" Harrison's shout echoed through the mansion. "Don't finish that sentence. Don't you dare." Cassandra, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke, her voice small and broken. "I loved you, Harrison. I really loved you. When my father told me about you, about the plan, I thought maybe we could be truly happy, that maybe you could love me back." Harrison looked at her, and for the first time felt something beyond polished affection. He felt pity. Cassandra was as much a victim as he was, shaped and manipulated by parents who saw people as chess pieces. "Did you know?" he asked. "About the baby?" "No." Cassandra shook her head violently. "I swear to God, Harrison, I didn't know about the child. My father only told me there was an ex-girlfriend who needed to be removed from the situation. I thought they paid her to go away. I didn't know they tried to kill her." Richard Whitmore stood up, regaining some of his executive composure. "That's enough. We all need to calm down and think rationally about this. Violeta, or Luna, or whatever you call yourself now. Clearly you've been through a terrible trauma. We're prepared to offer generous compensation." "I don't want your money," Violeta shouted, her composure finally breaking. "I want the 9 years I lost with my son. I want the life I should have had. I want to wake up without nightmares where I'm burning alive in that car." The silence that followed was absolute. Harrison really saw for the first time, the cost of what his family had done. Violeta was not just a victim of attempted murder. She was a woman who had spent a decade living in fear, reconstructing a face and an identity, searching for the child who had been stolen from her while hiding from people who had already tried to kill her once. "Take me to him." Harrison heard the words leave his mouth before fully processing the decision. "Take me to our son." Margot stepped forward. "Harrison, you can't be serious. Think about what this would do to the family's reputation, to the business." "To hell with the business." Harrison turned to her, years of repressed resentment finally finding voice. "To hell with the reputation. You tried to kill the woman I loved and stole my son? Do you think I care about corporate mergers now?" Violeta touched his arm gently, and Harrison felt a spark of the connection they had shared a decade ago. "It's not that simple, Harrison. His family doesn't know the truth. They think it's a legitimate adoption. If we go in there making demands, we just scare everyone away. So what do you suggest?" Violeta looked out the window, at the lights of Boston twinkling in the night. "I infiltrated this house for 8 months without anyone recognizing who I really was. I can do it again. But this time, you come with me." "This is madness," Cassandra murmured, but there was no conviction in her voice. She seemed broken, lost. Richard Whitmore pulled out his cell phone. "I'm calling our lawyers. Nothing more will be said without legal representation present." "Do it," Violetta said calmly. "But remember, Richard, every minute your lawyers spend trying to silence me is one more minute my own lawyers have to prepare the case against you. And unlike you, I have nothing to lose." Harrison took the folder from Violetta's hands, flipping through the documents with the eyes of a trained lawyer. It was all there. Bank transfers, criminally stupid emails sent from corporate accounts, even recordings of phone conversations Richard and Margot apparently didn't know were being recorded. His family hadn't just committed terrible crimes. They had left a trail of evidence that any prosecutor would love to have. "When?" he asked Violetta. "When do you want to go?" "Tomorrow," she replied. "The family lives in Greenwich. The boy, our son, has a soccer game at 10 in the morning. His parents always go to watch. And then you will see your son for the first time. And after that, we will need to decide what to do with all this truth." Harrison looked at the woman beside him, this survivor of tragedies who had become a silent warrior. "What do you want, Violetta? Really?" She was silent for so long that he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was heavy with years of repressed pain. "I want to wake up and find out the last 10 years were a nightmare. I want the body back I had before the fire. I want the years I lost with my son." She paused, wiping away tears. "But since I can't have any of that, I want justice. And I want Lucas to know the truth before making any decisions about his future." "Even if that means losing him?" "Especially if that means losing him." Violetta opened the car door. "Because unlike your mother, Harrison, I truly love our son. And love means wanting what's best for him, even when that best doesn't include me." Harrison followed her out of the car, through the worn door of the hotel, climbing stairs that creaked under their feet. Violetta's room was small but impeccably organized, every surface covered with documents, photos, and maps tracing her 10-year investigation. An entire wall was dedicated to Lucas, photos of him growing up, from baby to now, school reports, newspaper clippings about soccer games, even drawings she had somehow managed to obtain. It was a sanctuary for the son she could only love from afar. "Oh my God," Harrison whispered, stepping closer to the wall. "You documented his whole life. It was the only way I could feel like a mother." Violetta stood at the entrance, hugging herself. "Every night I look at these photos and wonder what his laughter is like, if he has nightmares, if he misses me even without knowing I exist." Harrison turned to her, seeing for the first time the magnitude of the sacrifice she had made. Violetta hadn't returned just for revenge or justice. She had come back because her love for her son was so consuming that she was willing to risk everything, even the chance of being in his life, just to ensure he knew the truth. "We're going to fix this," Harrison promised, knowing even as he spoke that some things were too broken to be fully repaired. "Somehow, we'll find a way." Violetta didn't respond, only gazed at the wall of photos of their son, and Harrison knew she had lost hope for happy endings long ago. Now she only wanted the truth, no matter how painful it was. Outside, Boston slept, unaware that tomorrow, on a soccer field in Greenwich, a 9-year-old boy would meet the father he had never known, and nothing would ever be the same again. The soccer field in Greenwich shone under the Saturday morning sun, the freshly cut grass exuding that characteristic green aroma that Harrison had always associated with carefree childhood days. Ironic, considering his own son had grown up without him, building memories in places like this while Harrison wasted years in boardrooms and empty dinners. He sat on the metal bleachers next to Violetta, both casually dressed in jeans and sweaters, blending perfectly with the other families who had come to watch the kids' games. No one looked twice at them, Just another couple supporting the young athletes, if only they knew the truth. Violeta kept her eyes fixed on the field, where the children were warming up. Her hands trembled slightly, hidden within the sleeves of her gray sweater. Harrison noticed the tension in every line of her body, the carefully controlled breathing of someone fighting not to crumble. "He's number 7, she whispered, discreetly pointing to a dark-haired boy who dribbled the ball with natural ease. Harrison felt the world stop. Lucas Brennan, though that wasn't his real name, moved across the field with the same athletic grace that Harrison remembered having in his youth. The boy laughed as he passed the ball to a teammate, his amber eyes capturing the sunlight in a way that made Harrison's heart ache painfully. "He looks like you," Harrison murmured, unable to look away. "The way he moves, that concentration when he's focused on the ball." "He has your smile," Violeta replied, her voice breaking. "I realized that when he was 3. Jennifer sent a photo of him to the school website, and I saw that smile and knew immediately." Across the bleachers, Harrison spotted Jennifer and Michael Brennan. Jennifer was an attractive woman in her early 40s, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing yoga clothes that suggested she had come straight from a morning workout. Michael stood beside her, taller, starting to go gray at the temples, holding an expensive camera to capture every moment of their son's game. They looked genuinely happy, completely normal. The kind of family Harrison had always imagined having one day, before his mother destroyed that dream. The whistle blew, and the game began. Harrison watched, hypnotized, as Lucas ran across the field. The boy was good, better than most of his peers. He anticipated plays, positioned himself strategically, shared the ball generously. Not just talented, but a good sport, a good kid. "Jennifer is a wonderful mother," Violeta said softly, watching the blonde woman shout encouragements. "She takes Lucas to the doctor regularly, never misses a game, helps with homework every night. Michael works a lot, but always makes time to practice soccer with Lucas on weekends." "Are you trying to convince me to give up on him?" Harrison asked, though without bitterness. He understood what Violeta was doing. "I'm trying to make sure you see the whole situation before we make any decisions." She wiped away a tear that had escaped. "Lucas is happy, Harrison. Genuinely happy. He has friends, stability, parents who love him unconditionally. But they aren't his real parents. Not biologically, but in every other way." Violeta turned to face him. "They are more his parents than we ever were. That's the painful truth we need to accept." Lucas scored a goal, and the bleachers erupted in applause. Harrison found himself clapping too. Irrational pride flooding his chest for this child he hadn't raised, didn't know, but who carried half of his genes. Michael Brennan was shouting encouragements, filming the moment, while Jennifer jumped for joy. This should have been Harrison's moment. He should have been down there, holding that camera, shouting for his son. Instead, he was a stranger in the bleachers, robbed of 9 years of moments like this by people who should have loved him above all. "I hate my mother." The words came out low but intense. "I really hate her." "Welcome to the club," Violeta replied with bitter humor. "I spent years nurturing that hate, letting it grow until it consumed everything. You know where that led me? To a miserable hotel room, alone, watching my son's life through stolen photographs. So what do? Just give up? We don't give up." Violeta straightened her shoulders, that steel determination that had kept her alive returning. "But we need to be smart. Lucas deserves to know the truth, but in a way that doesn't destroy him." The game continued, and Harrison couldn't stop watching Lucas's every move. The way the boy comforted a teammate who made a mistake. How he shared his water bottle with another kid who had forgotten his. Small gestures of kindness that suggested that, despite the terrible circumstances of his adoption, Lucas had grown up with good values. During halftime, Lucas ran over to Jennifer and Michael, who enveloped him in hugs and offered him orange slices. The scene was so perfectly normal, so painfully ordinary, that Harrison felt something break inside him. Not exactly envy, but a deep lament for everything he had lost. "I should be there," he whispered. "I should be the one offering those oranges, wiping the sweat from his forehead." "I know." Violetta placed her hand over his, the first voluntary touch between them since she had revealed her identity. "And I'm sorry. For everything." "Why are you apologizing? You're the victim here." "Because if I hadn't existed, if you had married someone your mother approved of from the start, you would have children now, children you would know, that you would raise. I destroyed that for you." Harrison turned his hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "My mother destroyed that, not you, never you." A woman sitting in front of them turned around, smiling curiously. "Do you have a child playing?" Violetta froze, but Harrison answered gently. "Just enjoying the game. I've always liked youth soccer." The woman nodded and returned her attention to the field, completely missing the charged moment between them. Harrison looked at Violetta, seeing the panic in her eyes gradually diminish. "How many times have you been here to see Lucas play?" "Every week during the year I spent in Greenwich." Violetta looked at the field, where Lucas was preparing for the second half. "I always sat in the farthest corner, always wore the mask, always pretended to just be passing by. Some weeks it was torturous, others, it was the only thing that kept me alive." The second half began, and Lucas was even more energized. He intercepted a ball, dribbled past 2 opponents, and prepared for a shot. Michael was on his feet, camera forgotten, shouting encouragement. Jennifer held her hands together as if praying, and then Lucas kicked. The ball flew through the air in a perfect arc, straight into the top corner of the net. Goal. The bleachers exploded. Lucas was surrounded by his teammates, all jumping in celebration. Jennifer and Michael were hugging, laughing and cheering, and Harrison felt tears streaming down his face, unable to hold them back. That was his son. His son was wonderful, talented, loved, and Harrison had nothing to do with it. Violetta was crying too, silent tears sliding down her cheeks as she watched the boy she had given birth to, but never truly known. Her hands gripped the metal bench tightly enough to turn her knuckles white. "We need to go," she whispered urgently, "before we completely lose control." But Harrison couldn't move. He needed to see more, to store every image of Lucas in his memory. The last minutes of the game passed in a blur of movement and emotion. Lucas's team won 3-1, and the kids formed a line to shake hands with their opponents, demonstrating the sportsmanship that their coaches obviously emphasized. Then, as families began to disperse, Harrison and Violetta descended from the bleachers, keeping a safe distance. They watched from afar as Lucas animatedly chatted with his parents, gesturing dramatically as he recounted his favorite plays from the game. "Ice cream?" Harrison heard Michael suggest. "I think our star of the day deserves a celebration." "Yes!" Lucas jumped, his joy so pure and uncomplicated that Harrison felt his heart break again. They began walking toward the parking lot. Lucas between his adoptive parents, holding both their hands and swinging between them like little kids tend to do. A perfect family, oblivious to the bombs of truth that loomed over their lives. "Wait!" Violetta said suddenly, pulling Harrison behind a large tree. "They're going to pass by here." And they did. So close that Harrison could hear Lucas's still quickening breath after the game. Could see the grass stain on his uniform, could catch fragments of his conversation about which flavor of ice cream to choose. Lucas passed within 3 meters of them, completely unaware. For one terrible and wonderful moment, his amber eyes swept in Harrison's direction, and father and son made eye contact. The world stopped. Lucas blinked, curious but not alarmed, simply registering a stranger near a tree. Then Michael said something funny, and the boy's attention returned to his parents, the moment forgotten instantly. But Harrison would never forget. That single second of connection, however unconscious Lucas was of it, would be etched in his soul forever. When the Brennan family disappeared from view, Violeta stepped out from behind the tree, trembling violently. "He looked at you. He saw you. He doesn't know who I am." Harrison was trembling too, adrenaline and emotion flooding his system. Not yet. Violeta turned to him, renewed determination burning in her eyes. "But he will know. We'll make sure he knows the truth." "How? How do we do that without destroying everything he knows?" Violeta pulled out her phone, showing a series of emails she had prepared. "Jennifer and Michael Brennan are good people. They deserve the truth as much as Lucas does. So we'll give it to them first, privately, before any public revelation." Harrison read the emails, saw the attached copies of documents proving the illegal adoption, Violeta's medical records, the DNA tests she had done using hair from Lucas that she had taken from his brush while working at the school library. "This is going to destroy them," he said softly. "I know." Violeta's voice was heavy with regret. "But they have the right to know that their son was stolen, not rescued, and Lucas has the right to know his true story." Harrison looked back to where the Brennan family had disappeared, imagining the storm that was about to descend upon their lives. Then he thought of his own mother, still in Boston, probably already calling lawyers and trying to bury the truth. "When?" he asked. "Tonight," Violeta replied. "I'll schedule a meeting, explain everything in person. I'll give them a week to process before we involve Lucas, and then we let them decide how they want to proceed. And if they decide to fight, to keep Lucas from us, then we respect that." Violeta said the words with conviction, though they clearly killed her. "Because unlike your mother, unlike all the people who hurt us, we're going to make the right choice, even when it hurts." Harrison pulled her into a hug, the first time he had truly held her in 10 years. She stiffened for a moment, then gave in, allowing herself that small comfort. They stood there, two broken souls under a tree in Greenwich, watching the place where their son had disappeared from view. "We'll do this together," Harrison promised against her hair. "Whatever the outcome, you're not alone in this anymore." Violeta nodded against his chest, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the truth could lead to healing. Even if that healing came at immeasurable costs. The Brennan house in Greenwich was exactly the kind of residence Harrison would expect from a successful upper-middle-class family. Colonial in style, with navy blue shutters and a meticulously kept garden, it conveyed stability and comfort without ostentation. The yellow lights in the windows suggested a home full of life and warmth, everything Harrison had wished to give his own son, but never had the chance. Violeta stood still beside him in the rental car, her breath carefully controlled as they watched the family that had raised their son through the window of the living room. Lucas was sitting on the rug, doing homework under Jennifer's watchful eye, while Michael read something on his tablet on the nearby sofa. A scene so domestic, so normal, that it made Harrison's chest ache. "We can still leave," Violeta murmured, though both knew it wasn't true. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, carried the weight of the truth for too long to turn back now. Harrison looked at the envelope in his hands, heavy with the documentation that would irreversibly change the lives of everyone in the house ahead. DNA results, medical records of Violeta, fraudulent adoption documents, bank transfers tracing the path of dirty money, enough evidence to destroy his own family and devastate an innocent one. "They deserve to know," he said, more to himself than to Violeta. "If it were me, I would want to know." Violeta nodded, though tears were already forming in her eyes. They got out of the car together, walking down the stone path to the front door like condemned prisoners marching to execution. Each step felt like it weighed tons, laden with the awareness of what they were about to do. Harrison rang the doorbell. Melodic chimes echoed through the door, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching. Michael Brennan opened the door, his polite smile faltering at the sight of the two strangers on his doorstep. "Can I help you?" His voice was gentle but cautious, the natural reaction of a father protecting his home. "Mr. Brennan, my name is Harrison Sinclair, and this is Violeta Navarro." Harrison forced the words through a tight throat. "We need to talk to you and your wife about something extremely important regarding your son Lucas." The change in Michael was instant. His body tensed, his hand gripping the doorknob as his eyes scanned both of them for threats. "If this is about school or some incident, you can schedule a meeting during appropriate hours." "It's not about school," Violeta said softly, her voice breaking with emotion. "It's about how Lucas came to be in your family. Please, Mr. Brennan. We know this is strange and frightening, but we just need 30 minutes of your time. After that, you can decide what to do with the information." Jennifer appeared behind her husband, her maternal expression immediately sensing the tension in the situation. "Michael, who are these people?" Her eyes landed on Violeta, and something passed over her face. Recognition? Impossible, they had never formally met. But perhaps there was something in Violeta's features, some echo of Lucas that registered on a subconscious level. "They're here about Lucas," Michael said tensely. "They say they need to talk to us." Jennifer visibly paled, a hand flying to cover her mouth. "Mommy, who's at the door?" Lucas's voice floated from the living room, innocent and curious. The sound pierced through Harrison like a sharp blade. His son was right there, just meters away, unaware that his entire life was about to be turned upside down. "Just salespeople, sweetheart. Keep working on your homework," Jennifer replied in a surprisingly calm voice, though her eyes were filled with fear when they returned to the visitors. "You have 5 minutes to convince me not to call the police." Harrison extended the envelope. "All we ask is that you read this. Afterward, if you want us to leave, we will respect that. But you deserve to know the truth about Lucas's adoption." Michael took the envelope as if it were radioactive, his fingers trembling slightly. Jennifer pulled him aside, and Harrison could hear intense whispers as they debated. Finally, Jennifer nodded, and Michael turned his attention back to them. "Back porch, 5 minutes. And if Lucas shows up, you leave immediately." It wasn't a request. They followed the couple through the house, Harrison catching glimpses of family photographs hanging on the walls. Lucas at various ages, always smiling, always happy. Trips to Disney World, hikes in the mountains, birthday parties surrounded by friends. A lifetime of love and stability he would never have known if his mother's original plan had gone completely as intended. The back porch was enclosed, offering privacy from prying ears. Jennifer shut the door firmly, checking twice to ensure Lucas couldn't follow them. Then she and Michael sat side by side on a wicker sofa, united in their parental defense, while Harrison and Violeta took opposing chairs. "Talk," Michael demanded, his arm protectively wrapping around Jennifer's shoulders. Harrison opened the envelope, spreading documents across the coffee table between them. 10 years ago, I was engaged to Violeta Navarro. The night before our wedding, my family orchestrated what seemed to be a fatal car accident. Violeta survived, but our unborn baby was taken from her while she was in a coma. Jennifer gasped, her hand flying to her mouth again. Michael stood still as stone, his eyes fixed on the documents, but not truly processing them yet. Violeta continued, her voice weak but determined. "My family in New Mexico was threatened. I was told that if I tried to contact Harrison or return to my former life, my parents and siblings would pay the price. So I disappeared, underwent surgeries to change my appearance, and spent years tracking what happened to my son." "This is insane," Michael whispered, finally picking up the first document. A DNA report comparing a hair sample from Lucas with samples from Harrison and Violeta. 99.9% accuracy, impossible to refute. Jennifer was now openly crying, but her eyes were fixed on Violeta with a mix of horror and growing recognition. "You were the woman in the school library, the Miss Martinez Lucas always talked about, who recommended all those adventure books." Violeta nodded, tears streaming down her own face. I needed to be near him, even if it was just as a kind stranger. I needed to see him grow, hear his voice, know he was happy. So you are. Jennifer couldn't finish the sentence, the reality finally penetrating her defenses. I am Lucas's biological mother, Violetta confirmed, and Harrison is his biological father. Our son was stolen from us and placed for adoption through illegal channels, financed by the Sinclair family. Michael was now flipping through the documents, his face going through stages of disbelief, anger, and devastation. He landed on one particular document, a record of a $250,000 transfer made from a Sinclair Industries account to a private hospital in Connecticut. We paid $80,000 for the adoption, he said, his voice dead. We were told it was a teenage mother who couldn't keep the baby, that everything was legal and approved. We checked the agency, reviewed all the documentation. The agency was a front, Harrison explained, feeling nausea at saying it out loud. Run by an associate of my family specifically to facilitate this kind of placement. You were victims just as much as we were, Mr. and Mrs. Brennan. You thought you were saving a needy child. Jennifer was now shaking, her world clearly crumbling. Lucas is our son. We raised him, loved him, cared for him since he was 3 days old. You can't just show up and take him because biology says he's yours. We're not here to take Lucas from you, Violetta said quickly, leaning forward with urgency. I've spent 10 years watching you raise my son. I've seen how Jennifer stays up when he's sick, how Michael never misses a game even when he works 16 hours a day. You are his true parents in every way that matters. Then why tell us? Michael asked, confusion mixing with anger in his voice. If you don't want to take him from us, why drag all this to the surface? Harrison took a deep breath. Because Lucas deserves to know the truth about his origins. And because the people responsible for this need to answer for their crimes. My mother and others involved cannot go unpunished for kidnapping and attempted murder. But going to the police means exposing Lucas to all of this, Jennifer whispered, understanding and horror dawning in her eyes. You want us to choose between protecting our son and seeking justice. Violetta nodded miserably. And I know it's not fair. Nothing about this situation is fair. But I've kept the truth for 10 years, and it nearly killed me. I can't keep this secret forever, and Lucas will eventually deserve to know that he has biological parents who loved him, even without knowing him. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of impossible decisions. Michael looked at the documents spread out before him, irrefutable evidence that shattered everything he believed about how his son had come to him. Jennifer was wiping tears that wouldn't stop falling, her whole body trembling with the magnitude of the revelation. Lucas needs to know, she finally said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Not now. He's too young, too happy. But someday, when he's older, when he can process this, he needs to know the truth. Michael looked at his wife, surprise and admiration crossing his features. Jennifer, do you realize what this means? All the trauma, the therapy he's going to need. He's going to need therapy eventually anyway when he finds out we lied to him his whole life, Jennifer interrupted, strength returning to her voice. And he will find out, Michael. Secrets like this always come to light. Better it come from us, on our terms, when he's ready. She turned to Violetta, examining the face of the woman who had given birth to the boy she considered her son. How old was Lucas in your plans? When did you plan to tell him? I thought maybe 13 or 14, Violetta admitted. Old enough to understand complex concepts. Young enough that we might still have a chance to build some kind of relationship before he becomes an adult. Jennifer nodded slowly. 4 or 5 years. That gives us time to prepare, to work with therapists on the best approach. She looked at Michael, seeking confirmation. We can do this. We can guide Lucas through this. Michael still looked devastated, but he nodded. And you? He looked between Harrison and Violetta. What do you want? Visits? Shared custody? We need to establish clear boundaries. We don't want anything that harms Lucas, Harrison said firmly. If you decide it's better for us to keep our distance until he's older, we'll respect that. If you want us to be part of his life now as family friends, we can do that too. You know our son. We don't, so we trust your judgment." Violeta added, "The only thing I ask is for permission to be in his life in some way, even if it's just as that woman from the library who recommends books. I've spent 10 years watching from afar. I just want the chance to know him, even if he never knows who I really am, until he's ready." Jennifer studied her for a long moment, and Harrison saw something shift in her expression. The fear was still there, but also recognition from another mother who loved the same child with the same ferocity. "You can visit him as a family friend. We'll tell Lucas you're an old colleague from the hospital who's new in the area. He's friendly. He'll enjoy having another person to talk about books with. And you," Michael turned to Harrison, "I suppose you want access too?" "I want to know my son," Harrison said simply. "But I won't do anything to confuse or hurt him. We can start slow. Let him get used to me first." Michael nodded slowly. "Maybe you can volunteer to coach. Lucas's team always needs extra help on weekends." "I would love that." Harrison felt emotion tighten his throat. Jennifer suddenly stood up, walking to the window that looked out onto the yard where Lucas sometimes played. "And the justice part? Taking your mother and the other criminals to court?" Violeta joined her at the window. "That depends on you too. If we pursue it, Lucas will be dragged into everything. His name will be in the papers. He'll be known as the stolen child. We can wait until he's older, until he can consent to being part of the case." "But those people will have additional years of freedom," Jennifer said bitterly. "Years to maybe do this to someone else." "I know," Violeta whispered. "Believe me, living with that kills me. But I've sacrificed 10 years of Lucas's life to protect him. I can sacrifice a few more years of justice for him." The week that followed passed like a blur of impossible decisions and conflicting emotions. Harrison moved through the world on autopilot, formally resigning from his position at Sinclair Industries, canceling his engagement to Cassandra, and severing all financial ties with his family. Each action was simultaneously liberating and terrifying, like jumping off a cliff without knowing if water or rocks awaited below. Margot tried to contact him 17 times in the first 3 days. He ignored every call, every message, every attempt by his mother to control the narrative and manipulate him back into the life she had built on lies and bodies. On the 18th attempt, he finally answered, only to say 3 words that echoed with absolute finality. "You are dead to me." The silence that followed said everything that needed to be said. Margot Sinclair, accustomed to having the last word in any situation, had no response to a son who finally saw through her manipulations. Violeta spent those same days in a different limbo, torn between the relief of finally having revealed the truth and the terror of what would come next. She and Harrison met daily in the small apartment he had rented in Cambridge, far from the family mansion and everything that represented his past. Together they planned the next steps, consulting lawyers about the legal implications, and preparing for the moment they would officially enter Lucas's life. The first official visit was scheduled for the following Saturday. Jennifer insisted it be casual, a barbecue in the Brennans' backyard, where Violeta and Harrison would be introduced simply as family friends. Lucas wouldn't know anything yet. This would be his first real interaction with his biological parents, and the weight of that hidden truth hung over everyone like a guillotine waiting to fall. Harrison woke up that Saturday morning with his stomach tied in knots. He changed clothes 3 times, unable to decide what a father would wear to meet his son for the first time, even if the son didn't know he was meeting his father. He finally settled on jeans and a navy polo shirt, something casual yet respectable. Violeta was waiting when he arrived to pick her up. She wore a pale yellow summer dress that made her look younger, closer to the girl he had loved 10 years ago. But her eyes carried the weight of everything they had survived, a gravity that no outfit could disguise. "Ready?" he asked, knowing neither of them really was. "I'll never be ready," she admitted. getting into the car. But let's go anyway. The drive to Greenwich took an hour and 40 minutes, each minute stretched by anticipation and fear. They drove in silence for most of the way, occasionally exchanging nervous comments about the weather or traffic, anything to avoid confronting the magnitude of the moment approaching. When they finally turned onto the Brennan Street, Harrison felt as if his heart might explode from his chest. The backyard was already set up for the barbecue, with a smoking grill and tables covered with red and white checkered tablecloths. Michael was at the grill, and Jennifer was arranging plates and utensils on one of the tables. And there, running across the lawn with a soccer ball, was Lucas. Harrison parked the car, but neither of them moved immediately. They simply watched through the windshield as Lucas dribbled an imaginary ball across the yard, narrating his own sports commentary loudly enough for them to hear snippets through the closed car windows. "He's perfect," Harrison whispered, his voice broken with emotion. "Yeah," Violetta agreed, tears already forming in her eyes. "He is." Jennifer saw them and waved, a forced but genuine smile on her face. She said something to Michael, who glanced briefly in their direction before returning his attention to the grill. The moment of truth had arrived. They got out of the car together, moving like condemned prisoners marching to execution. Lucas noticed the visitors and ran to Jennifer, saying something they couldn't hear. Jennifer placed her hand on his shoulder, clearly explaining who the guests were. "Lucas, come meet our friends," Jennifer called, her voice only slightly tense. The boy approached with the carefree confidence of a loved child who had never learned to fear strangers. His amber-colored eyes, so much like Violetta's, examined both of them with frank curiosity. "Hi." Lucas extended his hand first to Harrison, a gesture of politeness clearly taught by his parents. "I'm Lucas Brennan." Harrison took the small hand in his own, feeling as if he were holding something infinitely precious and fragile. "Harrison Sinclair. It's great to meet you, Lucas." "You're tall," Lucas observed with the brutal honesty of children. "Do you play basketball?" "I used to when I was younger," Harrison managed to reply through the emotion tightening his throat. "But soccer has always been my favorite." Lucas's eyes lit up. "Really? What's your team?" Before Harrison could answer, Lucas turned to Violetta, immediate recognition crossing his features. "Hey, you're Ms. Martinez from the school library. What are you doing here?" Violetta knelt to be at eye level with him, and Harrison saw her whole body tremble with the effort of maintaining composure. "Hi, Lucas. I'm actually a friend of your parents from your mom's work at the hospital. When I heard you were the cool kid from the library, I asked if I could come visit you." "Cool." Lucas accepted the explanation without question, the innocence of childhood allowing him to believe without suspicion. "Did you bring new books?" "Next time," Violetta promised, her voice only slightly unsteady. "Today I just came for the barbecue." Lucas seemed satisfied with that and ran back to his soccer ball, leaving the four adults in a heavy silence. Jennifer approached, gently touching Violetta's arm. "Are you okay?" The genuine concern in her voice was striking given the circumstances. "I talked to him," Violetta whispered reverently. "After 10 years, I talked to my son." Jennifer blinked quickly, fighting back her own tears. "He's special, isn't he? He's always been so happy, so easy to love." "You did an amazing job raising him," Harrison said sincerely. "I know this situation is impossible, but I want you to know that I'm grateful. You gave Lucas everything I couldn't." Michael joined them, a beer bottle in hand, his body language still defensive but less hostile than last time. "Basic rules for today. No mentioning biology. No dramatic revelations. Lucas thinks you're just family friends. Can we keep up that fiction?" "Absolutely," Harrison agreed immediately. "We'll follow your lead on everything." "Good," Michael nodded. "Because despite everything, despite how we got here, Lucas is our son, and we will protect him above all." "As it should be," Violetta said softly. "You are his parents. We are just visitors in his life." The word clearly cost her to say, but it was true. No matter what biology dictated, no matter how much love she and Harrison felt for Lucas, the Brennans were his parents in every way that mattered. Any future relationship would have to be built respecting that reality. The barbecue progressed with a surreal normalcy. Lucas kept up an animated conversation, talking about school, friends, and his upcoming soccer game. He was funny, smart, and completely at ease with himself. A child secure in the love of his parents and his place in the world. Harrison hung on every word, memorizing the way Lucas laughed, the animated gestures he made while telling stories, the way his eyes sparkled when he talked about something that excited him. Every detail was precious, pieces of a puzzle he longed to assemble. At one point, Lucas asked Harrison to play soccer with him. Violeta and Jennifer watched from the patio as father and son ran across the lawn, kicking the ball back and forth, Lucas shouting instructions and encouragements with the limitless enthusiasm of youth. "They have the same movements," Jennifer observed calmly, watching Harrison teach Lucas a dribbling trick. "The same way of planting their feet before kicking." "Genetics is strange that way," Violeta replied, unable to take her eyes off the scene before her. "Passing down traits we don't even know we have." "You're going to want more, you know," Jennifer said, not accusatorily, but as a simple statement of fact. "This won't be enough. Seeing him like this, interacting with him but not being able to claim him, eventually it's going to tear you apart inside." Violeta turned to look at her, seeing unexpected understanding in the other woman's eyes. "You speak as if you know." "Because I do," Jennifer admitted. "When we couldn't get pregnant, I saw children everywhere. Each one was a knife to the heart. And even after we adopted Lucas, even loving him more than life, there were still moments when I mourned not carrying him, not experiencing those first kicks, those first hours after birth." "But you were there for all the other first moments," Violeta said softly. "First steps, first words, first day of school. I missed all of that." "I know." Jennifer took her hand, the gesture surprising both. "And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that terrible people took those experiences from you. But Violeta, you need to decide now what you can live with. Because if we're going to make this work, if we're going to allow you and Harrison to be part of Lucas's life, you need to accept the role you can have. Not the mother, not the first person he looks for when he's scared or hurt. Someone in the background, important, but secondary." The words were harsh, but necessary. Violeta felt them cut deep, forcing her to confront the reality she had been avoiding. She wanted to be Lucas's mother. She wanted the lost years back. She wanted none of this to have happened. But wishing didn't change facts. "I can live with that," she finally said, surprising herself to realize it was true. Because being in the background of his life is still better than being completely out of it. And because he deserves to have parents who put him first, who make the hard decisions I couldn't make when I was pregnant with him. Jennifer squeezed her hand. "You were young and terrified and victimized by powerful people. Don't blame yourself for not being able to protect him then. You're protecting him now in your own way." On the lawn, Lucas scored a goal against Harrison, who dramatically fell to the ground pretending to be devastated by defeat. Lucas jumped on top of him, laughing, and Harrison wrapped his arms around the son he barely knew, holding him tightly for just a moment before letting him go. Michael joined the women, watching the scene with an unreadable expression. "He's good with kids, natural." "Harrison always wanted to be a father," Violeta said calmly. "He used to talk about it when we were together. How many kids he wanted, what kind of dad he would be." "And now he is a father," Michael said, almost to himself. "Just not in the way anyone would have chosen." The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lucas finally grew tired, collapsing into a patio chair with a soda can, cheeks flushed and hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. He looked perfectly happy, completely oblivious to the emotional currents swirling around him. "It was fun," he announced. "Can you come back next week?" The four adults exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. Jennifer nodded almost imperceptibly. "We'd love to," Harrison replied, his voice thick. "If your parents agree." "Of course they agree," Lucas said with the confidence of a child who never doubts his parents' love. "Right, Mom?" "Right, sweetheart," Jennifer confirmed, although her hands trembled slightly as she stroked Lucas's hair. "Harrison and Violeta are always welcome here." When it finally came time to leave, Lucas insisted on hugs. He threw his arms around Harrison's waist first, a quick, energetic hug that still made Harrison's chest tighten painfully. Then he turned to Violeta, and she knelt to receive him. When the small arms wrapped around her neck, when she felt the solid weight of her son against her for the first time in 10 years, Violeta thought her heart might burst. She held him for just 1 second longer than appropriate, breathing in the scent of child sweat and strawberry shampoo, memorizing the feeling of him alive and real in her arms. "See you later, Ms. Martinez," Lucas said as he released her, completely unaware that he had just given his mother the greatest gift she had received in a decade. "See you later, Lucas," she managed to say through tears she dared not shed in front of him. The drive back to Boston was silent again, but different from the drive there. Now the silence was laden not with anticipation, but with processing. The conference room at Thompson & Associates law firm overlooked Boston Harbor, where boats bobbed gently in the gray waters of November. Harrison stared out the window, trying not to think about the fact that his entire life was about to be dissected by legal teams on both sides of the enormous mahogany table. 6 months had passed since that first barbecue in the Brennans' backyard. 6 months of carefully orchestrated visits, of relationships growing in delicate layers, of a child beginning to ask why Uncle Harrison and Aunt Violeta always seemed so emotional when they saw him. Lucas had turned 10 3 weeks ago, and at that birthday party, with superhero balloons and chocolate cake, Harrison had watched his son blow out the candles and make a secret wish, unaware that his biological parents' deepest desires had already come true simply by his existence. But now there were choices to be made, choices that could no longer be postponed. The door opened, and Violeta entered accompanied by her attorney, Catherine Wells, a woman in her 50s with a fierce reputation in family law. Behind them came Jennifer and Michael Brennan with their own legal representation, followed by an assistant district attorney from Massachusetts, whose file on the Sinclair and Whitmore family case had grown to over 300 pages. Everyone sat around the table, except for Harrison, who remained by the window, watching a tour boat cut through the harbor waters. He thought about how simple it would be to board that boat and just sail away from all of this. But that time of escape had ended the moment Violeta's mask had fallen on that marble floor. "Thank you for coming," Catherine began, her voice professional yet warm. "I know these past few weeks have been emotionally exhausting for everyone, but we've reached a point where concrete decisions need to be made about how to proceed both legally and personally." Jennifer cleared her throat, her hands firmly intertwined with Michael's over the table. "Before we discuss anything, we want everyone to know that Michael and I have spoken with a child therapist specializing in adoption disclosure. Dr. Morrison has given us extensive guidance on how to approach this with Lucas in a way that minimizes trauma." "And what was her recommendation?" Violeta asked, leaning forward with full attention. "She suggests we take it in stages," Michael explained, pulling a document from his folder. "First, we explained to Lucas that he was adopted as a baby, something we had already planned to tell him when he was older. Then, after he processes that information and asks the inevitable questions, we reveal that his biological parents not only wanted him, but were victims of circumstances beyond their control." "How long between the revelations?" Harrison finally turned from the window, his legal training taking over, even as his heart shattered with the clinical discussion of how to tell their son that his existence was built on lies and crimes. "Dr. Morrison suggests at least 2 weeks, possibly a month," Jennifer replied. "Lucas will need time to process each new piece of information, and then, when he's ready, and only if he expresses a desire to meet you as more than family friends, we reveal who you really are." Violeta closed her eyes, breathing deeply. More waiting, more secrets. But she understood the wisdom in it, no matter how much it hurt. "And if he doesn't want to meet us?" Her voice trembled slightly. "If after learning the truth he decides he doesn't want biological parents in his life?" The silence that followed was heavy and painful. It was the question everyone feared, but no one had dared to verbalize until now. "Then we respect that," Jennifer finally said, tears welling in her eyes. "As much as it hurts. As unfair as it is after everything you've suffered, we put Lucas's wishes first. Always." Harrison returned to the table, sitting next to Violeta and taking her hand under the table. She intertwined her fingers with his, and he felt a tremor run through his body. Fear, hope, love, all mixed together in a whirlwind impossible to untangle. The assistant district attorney, a man named David Chen, finally spoke. "This brings us to the issue of the criminal case against Margot Sinclair, Richard Whitmore, and other co-conspirators. We have enough evidence to proceed with charges that include kidnapping, adoption fraud, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. But prosecuting them means exposing Lucas to massive public scrutiny." "How long would he have to testify?" Michael asked, his voice tense. "He wouldn't have to," Chen clarified. "Lucas is a minor and a victim. We can protect him from testifying, but his name will be in the documents. The details of his adoption will become public record. The media will have a field day with it." Harrison thought of his mother, currently confined to one of the family's properties under unofficial house arrest, while her lawyers desperately worked to contain the damage. She hadn't tried to contact him again after that last call, seemingly finally accepting that she had lost her son along with everything else. Cassandra Whitmore was somewhere in Europe, her exact whereabouts unknown even to her own family. The engagement had ended publicly, with Harrison releasing a vague statement about irreconcilable differences. Boston society's bets on the real reason for the breakup ranged from infidelity to financial problems. No one suspected the much darker truth. "Is there a middle option?" Violeta asked, her voice growing stronger. "A way to ensure justice without completely destroying Lucas's life?" Catherine Wells opened her own folder, revealing pages of legal documentation. "We have been working on a deal with the attorneys for both the Sinclairs and the Whitmores, in exchange for pleading guilty to lesser charges that allow for Alford pleas, where they maintain technical innocence but acknowledge that the evidence is sufficient for conviction. Their family pays substantial reparations to both Violeta and Lucas, and submits to reform measures that include the dissolution of the fraudulent adoption agency and funding for anti-trafficking organizations." "So no prison?" Harrison felt anger rising in his chest. "They try to kill Violeta, steal our son, and get off with just fines?" "Prolonged house arrest, electronic monitoring, massive community service, and reparations totaling tens of millions," Chen corrected. "It's not perfect justice, Harrison, but it protects Lucas and still holds the offenders accountable." Violeta squeezed Harrison's hand, calling his attention. Her amber eyes, so much like Lucas's, were filled with resolution born from 10 years of survival. "I spent a decade wanting revenge. Imagining Margot Sinclair rotting in a prison cell, experiencing a fraction of the suffering she caused me. But you know what I realized? Revenge isn't going to give me back the lost years. It won't erase the scars or fix what was broken. So you just give up?" Harrison's frustration was directed not at her, but at the fundamental injustice of it all. "I'm not giving up," Violeta gently corrected. "I choose our son over revenge. I choose to give Lucas the chance for a relatively normal childhood instead of dragging him through years of trials and headlines. I choose healing over hate." Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them after years of marriage. Finally, Michael nodded, and Jennifer turned to the group. "We support the deal, but with one additional condition." "What?" Catherine asked, already taking notes. "A portion of the reparations goes into a trust fund for Lucas, untouchable until he turns 18, Jennifer declared. "At that point, He can decide whether to accept the money or donate it, but the choice will be his, not ours, and not the Sinclairs. It was brilliant, Harrison realized. It gave Lucas agency over his own future while ensuring that those responsible for his trauma paid in a tangible way. "I agree to that," he said, "and I want to add my own inheritance from the Sinclair family to the fund. Every penny I was supposed to inherit goes to Lucas." Violeta turned to him, shock and gratitude mixed in her expression. "Harrison, you don't have to." "I do," he interrupted firmly. "That money is stained with the blood of the woman my mother killed to separate us. It's built on your pain and the years stolen from Lucas. I don't want any of it. But our son deserves to benefit from it, to turn something rotten into something that can help him build whatever future he chooses." Tears were flowing freely down Violeta's face now. Years of pain finally finding release. Jennifer moved from her chair and enveloped Violeta in a hug, the two mothers connected by their shared love for the same child. Michael placed a hand on Harrison's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity between men navigating impossible emotional territories. Chen and Catherine exchanged documents, refining language, adding clauses. The tedious work of turning emotional decisions into binding legal language. It took another 3 hours to finalize the details, each reviewing every line, ensuring that Lucas's interests were protected above all. When they finally signed the documents, the sun was already setting over Boston Harbor, tinting the waters gold and red. Harrison looked out the window again, but this time he felt something beyond despair. Hope, perhaps, or at least the absence of complete despair. "So now we wait," Violeta said calmly, putting away her copy of the documents. "We wait for Lucas to be ready. We wait for the right timing. We wait for the moment when the truth can be revealed without destroying him." "We wait together," Jennifer corrected, "because regardless of what legal documents say, regardless of who has what rights, we are all Lucas's family now. We all love him and want what's best for him." They left the office as an unlikely group, united by extraordinary circumstances and shared love for a child who still didn't know the whole truth of his story. Outside, Boston was preparing for another night. Millions of people living their lives oblivious to the drama that had unfolded in that conference room. Harrison and Violeta walked together through familiar streets, not back to their separate apartments, but toward the small park where Lucas would have his soccer game tomorrow. They sat on the same bench they had occupied dozens of times before, watching the city lights flicker to life as darkness fell. "Do you think he will forgive us?" Harrison finally asked, voicing the fear that kept him awake every night. "When Lucas learns the truth, do you think he will understand why we kept this from him?" It was a question they had both been avoiding, focusing so much on Lucas that they had barely processed their own feelings for each other. 10 years had changed them deeply. The girl Harrison had loved and the man Violeta had known no longer existed, replaced by survivors of traumas that had transformed them into different people. Violeta took his hand, studying the barely visible scars on her own skin where doctors had rebuilt what fire had destroyed. "I don't know if we can get back what was stolen from us, but maybe we can build something new. Not a return to the past, but a future built on truth instead of lies." "I would like that," Harrison whispered, pulling her closer. "I would like that very much." They sat together as night deepened, two survivors of a storm that should have destroyed them. Tomorrow there would be another soccer game to watch, another barbecue to attend, more moments to steal with the son they loved, but still could not claim. And someday, when Lucas was ready, there would be truth and tears and possibly forgiveness. But today, now, in this moment, there was peace. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in 10 years, the path ahead felt navigable. Together, Harrison and Violeta watched the stars emerge over Boston, each one a promise that even after the darkest night, the light always returns. And when Lucas finally learned his story, when he finally knew the whole truth about the love that had created him and the trauma that had nearly destroyed him before he was even born, they would be there. Not as the parents who raised him, but as the people who never stopped loving him, even when he didn't know they existed. Hope was a fragile thing, easily broken but surprisingly resilient. And as they sat on that bench, hands intertwined against the night's chill, Harrison and Violeta chose to believe that hope was enough. For now, for Lucas, forever.